Okay. Got her wipe down. Just a damp cloth. Very slightly damp cloth. Sometimes it's a little smoky, a little bit of Windex mixed in helps. I didn't do detailing with Q-tips or anything. Just get the worst of it off. Look up top. I like these top-mounted sockets much better than these. I don't like these phenolic wafer sockets. It's kind of cheesy. I'm surprised. I mean, given the quality of everything else here, then they throw these things in there. Does not make... Well, I guess it does make sense. Cost savings. I don't think they expected these things to last 50 years. So, who's that? It's actually, looking at the electrolytic here, it's actually engraved Motorola, or stamped Motorola. I'd guess Motorola didn't actually manufacture this capacitor. I don't know. I'll have to look at that. Let's see. Date code looks like 1952, if I get this right. Oh, I see a logo. This is a pyramid. It's a Motorola logoed pyramid capacitor. Those were, back in the day, fairly well regarded. Plus they got a cool logo. Oh, it's really tiny. I don't know if I've ever seen that stamped on one of these cans like that. Yeah, cool. But looks like 1952. I'm believing this thing was made around 56. All of the tubes are sitting back here they have to be original. This one, oh, maybe this was made a little later, because this one looks like date code 1957. This is the rectifier, which goes here. I'm just going to set these in because I'm not going to do anything with that yet. The 66s, 57. Looks like original Motorola, obviously period Motorola logo, and set him. And this one, 57. Let's see, are these date codes? Yeah, these are exactly the same date code. So these were put in, or at least manufactured, at the same time, 1957, it looks like, in here. Oh, well, look the looks of these. This black coating they put on them. They're like octal 6AQ5s, miniature 6AQ5s. I think a pair of these, I'd have to look again, but I think generally you get about 10 watts in push-pull. Class AB1 is what this thing is. What else? Oh. And a couple of 6AU7s. Again, it's a little worn off, but Motorola's. Same font style. I don't know. I really don't know if Motorola actually manufactured tubes. They probably just branded them like so many others did. I'm just going to set him there. There's another one. Logo's a bit more clear. Let's see, date code on this guy, 57. Oh my goodness. So, that's cool. But the date code is worn off of this, but from what I could see left of it, it's the same series of digits. So a couple of 12 AU7s. Each of these, of course, is a twin triode. A lot of stages, which is nice. And what is this? I think it's 6 AU6 front end. And the date on here appears to be 1956, with the Motorola, what's left of it, logo on it. I'd have to look. I don't know who made this. It's odd. An odd construction for what I'm used to, especially up top. This may be a particularly low noise variety or something, but this basically is the tone arm, the pickup cartridge for the tone arm, its amplifier, and then on down the line face splitter and output tubes, and this guy goes here. So I'm gonna pull these. Actually, I'm gonna bag them. Cats. We won't be needing these for the moment. Alright. I'll set those aside for now. Have a look at some other stuff. Before we go under the hood, this thing uses these cup plates, or at least one here. I've said before, I hate those things. They work, and they're actually fairly reliable for where they are in circuit usually. Volume, the tone stacks is what this one's used for. The bass and treble control and the volume control. You know, it's a very common network of resistors and capacitors, or I always say capacitors in this thing. But often, if you break that, you're kind of screwed if you don't have a schematic that shows exactly what the values in that thing are, the resistors and the capacitor values. Oh, you can get online and find something that approximates it, but trouble. If, let's say, somebody kicks this and breaks the pot, and along with it this cup plate, or even just breaks the pot. This is a special pot. It's got 5 terminals on it. 2, you know, the normal wiper terminal in the middle, down underneath, and the right-hand side and the left-hand side resistor, right? But it's got these 2 stinking taps up here. Pretty sure that's, yeah, that's the loudness control. And that's, I don't like that either, because if the pot needs to be replaced, you can't get this anymore. You know, unless you have it custom made or happen to have some scrap somewhere about. So you'd have to redesign the tone stack and volume and bass control. So that's why I hate these things. It's dirt cheap. That's why they did it. And they are reliable. I don't think they expected this pot to last this long. Certainly this amp has not been in ideal storage. It's been in pretty good storage, but not ideal. Mostly dirt and such wise. And the occasional insect and arachnid. Now let's see what else I'm missing. Oops. Oh, number 44, 6.3 volt pilot light. Guess that illuminated the dial or something. I don't remember. Anyway, let me just clip that onto the chassis here, get it out of the way. He's got great iron on it for the amount of power. I mean, this console did not have a radio in it at all. It was just a phonograph, a record player. And the thing probably puts out 10, maybe 15 watts. This thing has this much iron. It's remarkably rugged, heavy. It's not light. Anyway, it's here. There's an RCA input that would go to the tone arm pickup. Speaker output. I don't remember. It's possible. I've been into this once before, as I said, but it's been 15-20 years ago. It has a phono output for the speaker, which isn't unusual at all if you want to use something like this for a guitar amplifier, musical instrument amplifier. This switch here, right now I could not tell you what that does. We'll look at that. Out of the gate, always do a visual inspection. Out of the gate, this cord, where it goes through this strain relief, is troubled. I'm not sure I can see exposed copper yet, but this is a little bit. It's a lamp cord, for crying out loud. That's got to go. It's junk. Now, for an initial test, which I'm sure is kind of what I did when I got this thing, it was fine. I probably put this line cord in myself. I doubt that this just had line cord, because there's no way from this to power the turntable motor. So it probably went up to a switch or something, and that switch may have been what was in this area here. Let me find out. Motorola Golden Voice, 1956, 57, let's call it. 57, 58. But anyway, so I'm not putting any power into this until that's fixed. And while I'm at that, we'll be adding a 3-wire grounded cord to this, safety reasons and other things. I don't want the person who gets this after I'm done with it to have a problem with electrocution. I already had a peek under here. There's some other things that need to be remedied, really, before I'm going to do much of anything with this. I'm confident that the iron is good. The capacitor here, maybe, who cares if it's not, I'll fix that. The iron's no good, and pretty much its parts. I'll drill out the sockets and save those and the pots and everything. But I know that this iron's good. It should be. It was 15 years ago, and it's been sitting on a shelf. Capacitor, who knows? We'll see about him later. So what's under here? I haven't cleaned anything under here. Just a little bit of spider webby stuff. Shouldn't be too bad. Maybe vacuum it out. Yeah, I think I'll do that. But for right now, where's mine? What did I do in here? Oh, here it is. This little tiny capacitor down here is a replacement. One I replaced. That used to be a section in that big aluminum electrolytic, which the bottom of which is right here. Well, let me double check and see if I'm lined up right. Yeah, that'll work. Sorry about that. So yes, I isolated that. This is a, what is it, four section capacitor. Three of them are 400 volt working, and well, one of them is a 25 volt working. That one had crapped out, wasn't working, and the wire's still there. I just clipped it off from this terminal here, this tube socket, and it's still there. It's just wrapped around this other wire here, and chipped in a modern capacitor for that. I'm sure I picked up probably 22 microfarad, 50 volt or something. Can't pull it up and have a look. 47 at 35 volts. Well, must have been handy on the bench. So anyway, that's going to stay there. Depending on what happens as I bring this up slowly, and this capacitor here will determine whether that stays in circuit or not. It will stay in the chassis, definitely. That's going to stay put. Physically, mechanically, electrically, it may have to go if it turns out it doesn't work anymore. If it does work, I'm going to leave it, as I will with some, this other stuff. Good to have a cursory look around, do some checks, and see if like these paper capacitors. Good idea. The thing hasn't been powered up in a decade or more. Look across them and see if you got any thing that leaps out. If it's dead short, it's probably a good idea to isolate the thing and examine it, explore it more closely. There was something about this, another safety issue, and it's something, it comes up every once in a while, and it is quite, I'm ashamed of them for doing this. I'm going to just grab something to set this up a little bit. Often is the case, these tubes, not every pin of the tube is connected to something inside the tube. So, but the sockets, they come with all the terminals. So it's just an 8-pin socket, an Occo socket, right here, a tube socket. It's got 8 terminals. Well, the rectifier tube itself really only uses 4 of those pins, or terminals. But sockets have the terminals there. So what a lot of times happen is these manufacturers, they got in the habit of using these unused terminals to make other connections, to save a penny, so that they didn't have to put in like one of these terminal things here. Phenolic board with mounted, and it's got some terminals, 1 or more terminals on it. This one's got several in it. One here with 3 terminals and a mounting. So to avoid having to do that, and the cost of the punch the hole, and the cost of the rivet, and the cost of the part, and they just use these unused terminals on the tube sockets. Okay. Problem with that here. In some places it's acceptable because of where the tube happens to be in circuit. But the one place where it is not acceptable, and if you see it, fix it, you or somebody else's life may depend on it. And I am not exaggerating. This is the rectifier socket. As I said, there are really only 4 connections to the actual tube that sits in here. you'll see 1 connection, 2 connection, 3 connection, 4 connection, 5. What's this 5th one? That is the line cord. That's one side of the line cord coming in to this terminal, which needs to connect to the one side of the primary of the power transformer. Oh, it looks like this has been wired probably by me to be a power switch. May leave that be. Anyway, back to this. This unused terminal is but a small fraction of an inch away from this terminal, which, if those touch, puts this half of the line voltage, the plug, this is not polarized. That could be hot. And so by doing make the chassis hot and everything attached to it, including the turntable and the tone arm, all of it, simply because this, and you see how floppy that is. And these terminals are just kind of loose in the sockets. So, you could plug in tubes in and out of there, as people will do. That could touch. I can barely fit the tip of this screwdriver between these 2 points and make an electrical connection. The other problem with that, these tubes, well, I'll use this solid state rectifier as an example. Sometimes these index pins, this plastic indexing pin, breaks off, which means you could plug it in wrong. You could plug it in any way. These pins are spaced equally all the way around, whether there's some missing or not. And depending on how you plug it in, just that could complete a connection between one side of the line cord and the chassis. A whole bunch of ways. So if you see that, pay attention. Get rid of it. I'm certainly. It's another thing. I'm not even going to fire this up until that's taken care of and the line cord's replaced and the chassis is grounded to earth ground through a 3-prong cord. Another thing that can go wrong with these is that with this situation here, even if you don't plug a tube in there, a rectifier in there with a broken index pin, what if somebody doesn't know better and they plug the wrong tube in there? Well, that may, in fact, likely will connect this pin, which in that tube, whatever they plugged in there, you don't know what it is, but in that tube, that terminal, which is unused with this rectifier that belongs in here, but that terminal may be connected with any one of these others and send currents directly from the line voltage anywhere throughout the radio. So, no good could come of it. I don't know how to stress this enough. If you see this, if you work on these things, you see a line cord going directly to a pin on a socket for a 5Y3 or a 5U4 or 5W4 or 3 or whatever. One of those sorts of rectifiers, pay real close attention. Clearly, some series strung filament amplifiers, radios, and so forth, you would expect to see something like this. And there's, not a lot you can do about that to make it safe. Those you cannot just ground the chassis. The transformerless, the radios and amplifiers that do not have a power transformer, that they run directly off line voltage, the filaments of the tubes and everything else, that they're going to be hot, and they're designed somewhat with that in mind. Don't bet your life on it. But something like this, that is not a hot chassis, and it's not meant to be, could, through some minor problem could suddenly become a hot chassis, and these handles on these knobs could become live with that situation. If it had a 3-wire line cord with the ground properly grounded, and you did something wrong with the wrong tube, or you put it in wrong, it would just blow a fuse. Oh, and that's another thing. This thing has no kind of fuse nor circuit breaker. Well, how convenient that is, because I've got this point right here, which I'm going to disconnect from this terminal. Well, boy, howdy, wouldn't that be a convenient place to insert an inline fuse, just for safety. Double safety. Gets it away from this tube socket. Inline fuse. I don't think I'm going to install a fuse holder in this. A little bit too much like work, and I don't want to take it too far away from its native configuration. But the safety issue's got to be addressed before I'm going to use this, or hopefully anybody else uses it. We'll see. So, a couple of things. I'm not going to bore you with how that's done. It's pretty obvious. I'm going to snip these off, put an inline fuse. I'll show what that looks like later. How I did it, but not the process of it's pretty boring. And maybe put some power into the thing and see what comes out of it. I said, I'm confident the iron's good. The tubes were fine last time I looked at it. The only troubles I see maybe with the thing are going to be parts dirty, electrolytic flaky, or maybe some of these good all capacitors. And I'm not saying good all brand is good all, and I find those to be pretty. They last well. They hold up well. They're not those dang beeswax capacitors. These seem to be the plastic molded. It's got a cardboard tube, but a very tough seal on them. Some sort of polymer or plastic, epoxy, maybe, don't know. But I find these good all capacitors to be very rugged. I'm not surprised it's a Motorola, after all. That's troublesome. Why would they do that? That's just an oversight. I guess the UL guys don't have a sticker on this thing. Don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna roll this up for now. Make these safety changes, line cord and all. Come back when I'm ready to put some power into it. See ya.